Well, let's bring in another voice to this auto conversation. Yossi Levy, better known as the auto dealership guy, back when you were just an anonymous Twitter presence. Now you're out. You've got a beautiful studio. Yossi, I know you're talking to car dealers, you're talking to buyers, you're talking to sellers. We had a car dealer on Power Lunch today. He was kind of like, well, the consumer at some point will break, but so far they've been able to pay these higher costs. What are you hearing?
Brian, thanks for having me back on. You know, it's a very mixed bag at the moment. As you know, different automakers are exposed differently. And so there's a lot of anxiety from the dealers that are dealing with German manufacturers specifically. I would tell you that with the domestic dealers, Japanese, Korean, I've sensed, not so much anxiety and almost like, hey, the auto market has been through crazy ups and downs over the last couple of years. This is just another blip on the radar. Auto manufacturers will adjust. They'll run extra shifts. They have all this added capacity in their U.S. facilities. And so I would tell you, dealers are not too much into fuss at the moment, although certain pockets are.
It's interesting. You brought up German company, and there's Toyota trades here, Honda's HMC, some of the German companies, Volkswagen, obviously they own pretty much everything else. You look at the X5, BMW X5, it's made in South Carolina, so that theoretically would not be tariffed. The 3 Series, the 5 Series, I think are made actually in Germany. BMW stands for Bavarian Motor Works. So if you're running a car company, do you even think you know what you're facing right now if you've got manufacturing in America, but other places as well?
Here's the thing, Brian. These manufacturers don't want to lose market share. And so if you see what BMW did, they announced a week or two ago that they were going to price protect dealers up until May 1st, right? Just as an example. And so at the moment, what it seems like is happening, Ferrari, which is not, of course, not a mainstream brand, right? No. Very much exotic luxury. They announced that they were raising prices by like 10% or so.
Nobody
but
cares.
The point I'm trying to make is that
if people talk about Ferrari and tariffs,
I think there's actually, there's an important point here. I think the point here is that, and BMW is another good example, their price increases are about 4%. So those are two examples, two very different pockets of the market. But the point here, no one has said 25%, right? So why? And I think I said they're trying to see what their competition is going to do. They don't want to jump the gun. There's a lot of uncertainty. And so they're taking these baby steps. And BMW, in my opinion, is one of the best examples of this because they did send a memo to their dealers, which I got a hold of. And their price increases are only 4% at the moment, effective May 1st. And so I think these manufacturers are going to have to wait and see what is going to happen, what are their competitors going to do, and then they're going to react accordingly.
So, Yossi, if you had to place your bets where you just left off there, do they pull back on EV initiatives and put it into their manufacturing here, or do they just pull back completely and just see where the chips fall? And the C choice of all this is that, does any of this, in your opinion, really take place, or are we a month out and we're having a completely different conversation?
I think it's day by day at this point. There isn't a consensus among anyone or anything. The automakers and the dealers, it's very much a mixed bag at the moment because everyone's reacting to the live news. But I will tell you that I haven't seen, it's been relatively positive in the sense that dealers are aware that their manufacturers have added some added capacity they can add to manufacture more cars and, at least smooth this out. So if these do stick, that they can absorb it over some period of time. Everyone's going to take a different strategy. Not everyone's going to price protect dealers. Some are going to pass, half of it to the consumer, some more. What's interesting is that if you look at the weeks of income required to buy a car today, it's about 4 less weeks or 4 fewer weeks than it was, say, a year and a half or 2 years ago. And so while we might not notice it, and it does feel like things are still very expensive and cars are still roughly at $48,000 average price for a new car, that's still right around all-time highs, the average weeks of income required to buy a car has actually come down. So I can't sit here and tell you consumers can't absorb more. They can. That's just the reality based on weeks of income. But I just don't think that this is going to all get passed on to the consumer. I don't think that's feasible. No. And I think that BMW has kind of showed us here that it might be baby steps by the manufacturers.